Most noble citizens, we must bypass a life of dormancy and vice to pursue the generative endeavor of a hard day's work. The benefits of these pursuits are not secured by chance or charity, but through the merit of your character and the firmness of your convictions. It is you who are planting the seeds of trees whose shade you know you shall never see.
As I was saying, I feel like the purpose of management on some level is to make you feel just valued enough to not want to quit your job every day, but then not so valuable that you get uppity or fucking start thinking that maybe you should be able to ask for better working conditions from your employer or even perhaps another employer. Like there's a fine line of like, hey, you're great, but you know, they have to like knock you down a peg. And then managed out, that term I was starting to explain, is basically the process of just turning that pressure up just a little bit, because whether they're trying to actually improve your performance or not, or they're trying to just make it so your workplace is unbearable and you quit, it's the same mechanism that they use either way. Yeah. Like it's the exact same processes that's used to do that. So they will sit you down and tell you everything about how this is actually for you and because they believe in you. And the whole time it's like actually a process of making your workplace harder for no extra money, so that when you eventually have to leave, they can say that they don't owe you shit. So they can say it's
right.
Not.
Yeah.
It is.
And to basically cover all bases legally.
Right.
So to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so again, it's like all in the language of like, this is for improving your performance. Like it's like it's a very
we offered you a chance for performance improvement.
Terrain. We just think you can perform so much better than you're currently performing, and if you don't perform better, we're going to fire you. But we're doing this because we believe in you, that you can perform better. It's that sort of like
your
weird,
performance
like,
didn't hit our metrics, and we're releasing you to be free on your own.
Yeah, so that's. I don't know. Regardless, listener, I have been going through some workplace changes here. And it's been very interesting times for myself and my colleagues, certainly, and I think everyone everywhere. Changes. But it's exactly. Going through. That's a great song. But it's the Broken Whip podcast. We're going through changes, and I feel like I was thinking about before we got on. I was thinking about maybe the new theme for the show is like this might be the last episode. Just the new theme for the show is. Every episode is this might be the last episode of the podcast. Just because I think doing that for like 100+ episodes is a good bit, and I think we have that kind of dedication to a bit like that.
To the bit,
but
yeah,
it's also it could always be true because of nuclear holocaust. So we haven't
decided if this is a conservative or a. I mean, if this is the alternative pod, I'm kidding. I know we're doing the regular
podcast
here
today, dude. We're doing the damn news. We're
doing
in here.
The news.
I've been all full of fire. I mean, it's. I don't know about you, dude. I'm in a hole lately, and part of it is obviously like just the workplace stuff I've been dealing with, and then the other part of it is like, what the fuck is there? Like, I'm waiting for anything to become. Like, I'm just looking to see what is reflected in, like, prices, essentially. And outside of that, it's, like, at a certain point, too depressing to really dig into because there's nothing
knowing
I can
how
fucking do about
prices
it.
Are not going to go down from this point. And
Never
it's already
again. Yeah,
very bad. Yeah, not going to go down as long as we can remember. At least as long as this administration. And for a few years after that, it would stick. Bare minimum.
Pricing aside,
so we're talking
the bigger
5
issue,
years bare minimum.
The bigger issue, quote unquote, and it's not really an issue. It's more like a thing we're going to have to learn to live with. It's just the altered status of the United States from being like the privileged hegemon to the global belligerent pedophile
laughingstock of the
empire.
world. Yeah.
Like, that's considerable downgrade in some senses, and it sucks. And
and as we've talked about,
humiliation. A lot of people are calling it the American century of humiliation.
As we've talked about it being relegated to one sphere of influence rather than being on top of the world, quite literally.
Right. Right, and I mean, he needs no introduction, but we got my co-host here, the main Vane himself, Mr. Vane, the pirate broadcaster, the producer. And I've been watching a lot of One Piece because it's a fucking awesome show, honestly, and I'll highly endorse the One Piece live action too. I think that the Oda, the writer, is a known leftist, and as any artist, they can be a little confused, but he's also a brilliant writer, and I think there is a really wonderful ideological underpinning to One Piece that a lot of other shows lack, and the more I appreciate it, the more I'm enjoying it. So that's the lighter fare up top, even though somehow got nuclear holocaust in there too.
Yeah, One Piece is used all around the world, especially as of late, as this is becoming a decade of protest. A lot of the symbolism of modern protest is borrowed from One Piece, which is pretty cool.
Well, it's interesting because the question of sovereignty is very constantly brought up and examined in One Piece because of the relationship between pirates and marines, where pirates essentially exist in this realm where your sovereignty is dependent on your ability to survive in the ocean and in the most dangerous and far-reaching parts of it, and that is a kind of society some people prefer to anything like what the Marines are doing, which from the outside, the more you learn about it, the more horrific it kind of seems. And there's a really amazing texture and complexity to the whole world, though. They're constantly intermingling with the Marines, and there's so many interesting, good characters. But also the heavy symbolism of just calling them the Marines. I don't know why that never hit me before, but how fucking hilarious! There's no other Marines on planet Earth. Everyone says there's one, the few, the proud, right? I mean,
the few, the proud.
I love that. So there's something always very goofy and heavy-handed. Semper Fi, brother. Yeah, this is a veterans podcast.
This is the
People
Conservative Wind podcast. Hell yeah, brother.
It's more but we are veterans. We're veteran. We're Grand Platinum style veterans, I guess. But we don't have tattoos. We don't have any tattoos.
No tattoos of that sort.
And I don't know if he's gonna win or not. I'm not really at the end of the day, my investment goes about as far as the question of, do I live in the state of Maine or not? And I'll give you the not to dox myself, but the answer is no. I do not live in the state of Maine, so hope that works out for you guys. Janet seems probably better than Janet Mills, so I don't know.
Yeah, I like him as a candidate. I guess I like that people like him are emerging all across the nation.
Right,
and he's not just one. He's one of many people. Maybe a little odd, probably a little bit is specific for the state of Maine. He's kind of, I think, fitting, and that's why he might win, actually, potentially.
Well, and this is, I mean,
a little scattered in politics, as you said, even artists tend to be.
Was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, he is an artist, I'd say. Yes.
Yeah, in his own way, I suppose.
No, but what I was going to say about it too is that I've heard it said, and I don't think it's really that crazy. Unfortunately, I don't think that crazy to speculate on whether or not he's an intelligence asset. But at a certain point, I'm a big believer in Occam's razor, and more importantly, if he is, I do not understand how advancing an archetype like this guy benefits.
Right.
the motive. Maybe time will tell.
Time will tell. Really, but there's an element of authenticity there that is very, just authentic.
And I think honestly, dude, I don't blame anyone for being suspicious too, because if I had never lived in New England, I would be like, what, he had a fucking totenkopf on his chest and he had no fucking idea? I could not imagine someone so removed from the context of even the things they put on their body, or just so stupid.
Yeah, sort of like in our Florida series. It's kind of like when you hear a story, but then at the end of it, you hear oh, but the guy was from Florida. Oh, well, that makes sense. That checks out.
Dude, I think specifically there is a certain kind of New England overall. There's like a certain kind of American that's very recognizable to me, and very, I think, national too. Like they show up all. It's a character that's very American all throughout.
Yeah, I like to think that each and every state has the potential to have a sort of candidate like this emerge that is
and who knows, maybe the next
authentic
one will be better,
to that state. Yeah, maybe the next will be better.
I don't think they can all be spies.
The thing I think that most of us can agree across so-called partisan lines is that something significant has to change. We need to get all of these people out of Congress that we currently have, and if they can be replaced by your ordinary citizen, that's getting back to something at the nature of true democracy. Whether or not they might be flawed, whether they might not look perfect across the federal or the full states, you might be someone from California who says, that guy, Graham Plattner, doesn't quite make sense to me. But I think there's an element of these common people breaking down the barriers of Washington, so to speak, that is what is genuinely needed in this era of populism. Not like a Trump drain the swamp, but actually the real thing that people have been seeking for many years.
They won't all be former Blackwater. They won't all have stupid tattoos. You're perfect.
Exactly.
Your better candidate will come along. And it's like, for now, it's like, I'm willing to just see what happens with this guy.
It seems to represent something of a wave, though, is what I'm hoping. And I don't look at each particular candidate. Sure, there is baggage at each particular candidate, but I'm liking what I'm seeing in general across the. And I wasn't
even planning to talk, international politics. But I mean, it just kind of came up, and then I mean, Graham Plattner is a good segue to the international as a veteran, just like us on this show. It's a veterans podcast. We've just never mentioned it before because we're both, we can't talk about it. But yeah, we're veterans, and for that reason,
for legal purposes.
But more importantly, there is a war going on. There's a war on, if you haven't heard. And we're getting all kinds of activations from the sleeper cells that we signed up for during the early war on terror. Yep. And thank God, because after the Doge, long-term listeners will know during the Doge era, we started with a lot of promises of funding from USAID, and then that all blew up right away thanks to Elon and Tammits, and that's why we hate him.
Yeah, that's the only reason. It's because he owes us a check from USAID.
We're in so much debt over this podcast.
Really got to us.
But the sleeper cells getting activated is perfect. It's a really good timing to fill some big holes in our budget. So we're glad about that.
Yeah, it's great timing. It's also great timing that Elon was found guilty by a jury and is going to be liable for a payment at least in the billions of dollars for his fraud of Twitter that when he acquired it, the jury found that he did actually commit fraud.
Here's a hot take. Let me know when we're locking him up. Find him to the ends of the earth. Let me know when we're locking him up. Anyway, so the war in Iran. I'm sure Elon's involved in some way or another, but the biggest thing is that, like, I want to give a shout out to the people of Iran, and this isn't just because of our sleeper cell activation. It's because I am so goddamn tired of this country using my tax dollars to go to war with people who I don't have anything against, and I'm sure at the end of the day have really nothing against me except for some extremely confused and fraught historical relationship that neither I nor them were really alive for, and are most importantly, the government of my deranged pedophile cabal empire has a chip on their shoulder that's decades long for this country. And again, like, patriarchy is awful, and I have lots of bad things to say about it, but it's like, I was thinking about it before we got on, or it's like, it feels like talking about the issues with Romani culture or Jewish culture during the Third Reich. And it's like, it's like that's why it's like, okay, anytime anyone like wants to say something about the issues with Iranian society or any kind of like Islamic or Muslim state that, again, my country's been at war with my whole life, millions of people in Iraq, million plus. Like, it's just, again, it's like, were the criticisms of the Nazis during the Holocaust valid? It's like there's a certain point where it's like, whatever the criticisms can be made lose all validity because of the actions of the criticizing party. And that's kind of where I feel I am as an American. And anyone who claims the title of American with pride and isn't willing to own up to that kind of humility, I find it despicable. And luckily, I don't think that's a very popular sentiment these days, judging on the popularity of this war. So I don't know about you, how you're feeling about it, but that's kind of where I am with this war. It fucking stinks. No one seems to fucking like it somewhat. And I'll tell you, I am in the heart of the world where, you know, like the war economy, I'll tell you. And like, it's not rah, like bloodthirsty the way that it was post 9/11. And obviously there hasn't been any kind of 9/11 style event yet, but people are fucking suspicious as hell too. Like there was that, like, I don't remember what it was, but some guy in a shirt that said something about like praise Allah. And I've heard people at like my job talking about it's like, yeah, that was fake. And it's like, you know what? Cool. Americans did not used to be that cynical and suspicious, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but I don't blame them. I understand it, and I don't think it's good for this government. So there's something to be said about that. So I don't know. That's the Iran. I wanted to talk about the air superiority myth too, but did you have anything else you wanted to say about like the attitude about the war up where you are? Because I'm sure it's even more dismal.
No, I think actually the sentiment up here is actually pretty similar, that nobody here is really pounding the drums to go to war either. And yeah, and I think it would be good to move on to a discussion of the idea of airfare, like you said.
Air superiority, right?
Superiority, yeah, well, I mean, or even military superiority.
Oh, yeah. Before we get into the military stuff, though, the last thing I want to say about the domestic politics of this war, that it is really true that war with Iran has been a bipartisan consensus for decades, and it's been a horrific idea for decades as well, and we're seeing the why unfold now right before our eyes. Yeah. And unfortunately, the Democrats are quite mum in a lot of circumstances because, as I just said, it's been a bipartisan consensus for a long time, and people like Chuck Schumer love that. That's their whole game is bipartisanship. So
and this has been a big revealing moment, as you said.
I would say so.
Before that, we're really starting to see, I think, a change in people's attitudes, an attitude shift since the early 2000s when we were led into the first wars with the Middle East versus now, and how different things feel, the lack of any type of buildup or explanation that is coherent for going.
For overt jingoism. It's just a lot more subdued, and where it is there, it's a lot more vicious and vitriolic, but it's a lot more, I think, of a minority attitude too.
Yeah, and so I think this notion of having military superiority is really based on our current it's really based on the atmosphere that Trump has created based around misunderstanding NATO and the agreement, the post-World War II agreement that was formed to avoid militarism, which Trump has really inverted, I think, in many ways.
Yeah.
By, as he always does, lying.
Turning into a military alliance, basically. Right.
Yeah. And so he claims that, for example, he has for many years argued that our NATO allies are not contributing enough and things like that. But that actually has created a fundamental misunderstanding of how NATO works, which was a mutual agreement of the entire rest of the world that they would spend no more than 5% of their GDP on military. So it's actually a cap on every country so that they can't spend more than 5%, so that we can't get in an arms race like what happened before the World Wars. And in every way, basically, the MAGA movement is based around these complaints and grievances of how the existing international world order operates, which is based around a set of logical and rational principles, really from after counting up the bodies of World War II and deciding, we should probably never have that happen again. So we created a centralized system of laws, which now they're eroding at the foundation. And as we've said, we've devolved into spheres of influence instead of a singular world where the U.S. dominates as the moral leader and oftentimes the police of the world. And that goes along with this having an understanding of how the NATO alliance system worked. The U.S. creates the money, has unlimited money to spend on military, so it's been able to maintain a military oftentimes 10 to 1 larger than the next biggest country, because they're not allowed to spend more than 5% of their GDP, while we can spend any amount of money on military. So if anything, that's created a social base in America built around militarism and the idea of growing the military faster and faster, just like President Eisenhower warned about the idea of the military-industrial complex. He comically told us on his farewell address speech that we should keep an eye on the military-industrial complex.
Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
That thing I started keeping an eye on that. Thanks, man.
And so, basically that's the situation that we're in leading up to the attack. Yeah, the hubris of empire
is a term that looms large in my mind, and I think about like the fact that the Spanish in the, we're always talking about Florida, you and I, but the Spanish at a certain point ran into this really fundamental issue in power projection into the New World that every colonial power ran into and had to come up with a different solution for, which is that if you have your main, population that has like their own like nationalist sentiment that funds everything you do in one place, the further you get from that place, the harder it gets to justify spending endlessly in money and lives to project power into that place.
Yeah, especially when
now there's this other country involved that, look, I mean, like the fucking anti-Semitism that's being stirred up and becoming acceptable on the fucking right wing too is like really vile. And it's the same thing that's always been said too, where it's just like at a certain point, the like ethno-nationalism of Iran and the ethno-nationalism of the white nationalists in America, despite their genocidal view of each other, they do become collaborative at a certain point. We've talked about it a lot, and it's like it's what's being played out too with this like holy war in Iran. You have like fucking Pete Kegsbreath, the Secretary of War, now playing word games about war and defense while having the Crusader, all these like dumbass Crusader tattoos on himself. It's like the historical parallels run so deep, you know, like it's. And it's like I said, what I was getting to with the Spanish too, where it's like at a certain point, or not at a certain point, the point has been reached. The point is reached in Vietnam. Like the point was reached in Vietnam, where Americans started being like, okay, you have X amount of time before we stop being okay with you wasting like American lives and money in a spectacular way on the violent conquest of other countries. And I mean, God bless them, their patience for that has gotten less and less, even though the Iraq War was a very grim and efficient undertaking in its like murderous conquest. It was also very unpopular the whole fucking time. It was never something Americans liked very much. And the only reason I think it was ever something that ever happened was 9/11. I think the spectacular event of 9/11 allowed them to justify something that even at that time would have been politically non-viable without 9/11. So it's like, I think it's not redeeming, but I think it just says something at least for the bloodthirst of the American population overall. We're fat, we're lazy, we're not as bloodthirsty as our leaders might make us seem. So it's I try to find hope in that.
Right, and one thing that just seems very true is with Trump, every accusation is a confession, as many people have said.
Oh my God, true. Yeah.
And he has literally spent decades talking about invading Iran specifically in order to get more popularity. And so it really reveals his thinking that if you're ever suffering from low popularity, just invade Iran. And that will, like George W. Bush, they called the effect rally around the flag effect. And with Trump seems to think as a very simple-minded person, not realizing that there was actually almost 2 years of pounding the drums of war on news. And of course, like you said, there's a horrific event and there was enough time building the case, the idea of weapons of mass destruction, getting reputable people at the time like Colin Powell to stand before the United Nations and lie. And this time, none of that's happening. They're not taking the time to lay that out in any way. They're acting as quick as possible. And I've already seen people saying that the invasion of Iran is going to be compared to Hitler's invasion of Poland in the grand scheme of things, as a triggering event for a world war. And I would love to get into that.
Let's get into that, because
let's talk about the weaknesses of American empire, as we were trying to talk about the notion of its air power and military power. I think all this ties together.
And to start with, it's obviously horrific because of what they've already done to the people of Iran and are continuing to do, and we want to, make sure to acknowledge that. But the reality is that it's also limited. It is not the it's like the Panzer tanks, or I think those were it is at a certain point this psychological juggernaut for the empire to convince themselves of their own invincibility. And that's really what it does more than anything else.
That's what's driving it, to convince ourselves that we're powerful, and that at this time, if we were to break this system that we already have, it's really when the most powerful men in the world get together in small rooms and decide amongst themselves, or think that they're deciding upon the entire fate of the world, you basically have a chess game playing out between men like Putin, Xi, and Trump. And all of them feel that they're going to win, or believe that they're going to win, but only one of them is most certainly overestimating his own cognitive abilities, and that's Trump. Well, he can't possibly be winning. He's not even playing the same game, and can't actually understand the dimensions of these men that have ruled these countries now for extended periods of time, and are not con men, essentially, have not built their reputation through these interest groups, essentially, and these figures who are all aspiring upwards and collaborating, quite literally the definition of sycophants, who are, they cling to powerful people and excuse powerful people in the hopes that they are going to gain a small amount of that power themselves.
Yeah.
So it's the self-rationalization of building an empire. And as you said, with that comes the idea of flexing as an empire and trying to prove to yourself how powerful you are. So that's where I think it's important to recognize that there's this voluntary choice being made by our leader to rupture the world order and to think, I can maintain this gap of 10-to-1 power to the next countries. They won't be able to possibly build their own economic systems. So even if I disrupt the world order, I'm always going to come out on top. And there's even been quite a lot of evidence that Trump thinks after the Butler shooting, he seems to think that it's a fate of God, and that's what a tattoo Deus Vult means on Pete Hegseth. So there's quite a level of this overconfidence that God is behind me, and that's why I don't need to be the smartest man in the room. I don't need to be the most well-read man in the room. I don't need to speak the language of my opponent, even though he's a polyglot for certain when you're standing in a room with Xi and Putin. And
or
you are the only
person.
Matter. Yeah, or Iranians. It's like essentially thinking, these people are weak. They're stupid. They can't possibly negotiate properly. And that's why I'll always come out on top. And my only strategy has to be to pretend I have a royal flush all the time. No one will ever catch on to this strategy of me just saying, I've got a royal flush. I've got a royal flush.
I've got the most dangerous planes you've ever seen. I have superiority. It's like nothing else. So let's get into the technicals a little bit, because I just mentioned it's like the reality of Iran as an opponent, as a nation, is the Islamic Republic of Iran it's just those first two words. It's like it's an Islamic Republic, and those organizing principles, along with its massive population, oppressive or not, have created a place that is not the kind of enemy that America has actually really... I don't think there's really even a parallel to
the closest parallel is probably Vietnam. People are making that parallel, but there's not exactly...
But it's bigger. It's bigger. It is more adept militarily. It has a production capacity internally that Vietnam couldn't rival at the time of the Vietnam War.
The only thing that's certain about it is that it will be a worse failure than Vietnam even was.
There's no way to... It's crazy, too, because it's like they knew this for so long. It's been pretty common knowledge, but
common knowledge to lay people like ourselves who
literally
couldn't possibly have access to classified info, and that also speaks to the level of arrogance that lay people understood the nature of warfare, just reading, occasionally glancing at a newspaper, a regular old public, not even paywalled newspaper, the kind which we try to link in the description for you.
And thank you for that.
Yeah, that sort of thing basically is enough to inform people like, hey, the nature of warfare has sort of changed over the years, and even recently is constantly evolving. Drones seem to be kind of important.
Exactly.
I think that's like a general observation that people understand. And yet, seemingly, it's the people at the very top of our administration who don't get this and only flex the government as how much do we spend on military in the most expensive and exhausting ways, like an F-35, which was shot down by Iran by a drone, which is a perfect example.
Allow me to try and paint a concise picture for the reader, and then we'll build, or for the listener, and then we'll build on top of that. But I mean, I think to really summarize like the historic folly of the military-industrial complex that we're observing right now, and this has been spoken of ad nauseum by others, but essentially the U.S. military, because of its over-bloated and executive bonus-driven military structure, has invested heavily in things like missile interceptor systems because of their biggest customer, Israel, and in big, expensive, super fast planes that at the end of the day, when you're up against like $50,000 drones that it's now shown, as my co-host just mentioned, can like the fact that the shot had drone taking down an F-35 just once.
That's the one that took like $2 trillion to develop and costs over $100 million per new one every time we make a new one, essentially.
And then I wanted to also make sure to mention the Ghost of Kuwait situation to also highlight the depth of the complexity of what I mean, where it's like the U.S. overinvested in this overexpensive bullshit in selling it to their allies under the pretense that it would offer them some sort of security by owning it. That's where a lot of the Gulf states relationships is.
It's like the Star Wars program, too, that
well, and what happened with
now
Kuwait
Trump is implementing his own bullshit version of that. But I don't mean to interrupt.
But do you know about the Ghost of Kuwait situation, dude? Do you know?
No, tell me about that one.
Basically, Kuwait. I don't know if it was F-35s that were shot down. I might have been F-15s.
Yeah, basically, F-16s maybe, or
F-16s. Yes, I think they were F-16s.
Yeah.
But basically, this Kuwaiti pilot, which friendly nation, kind of went rogue during these. I think they were like arrested Kuwaiti pilot for criminal negligence during a friendly fire incident where he shot down an F-15. Yes, he shot down F-15s. Was arrested for U.S. F-15s were shot down, which some returned. So essentially, like, F-15s had never been shot down before this, I believe, too. This was the first time any F-15 had been shot down. Yeah. And it was by friendly fire, and he shot down 3 of them, I think, is what happened.
Yeah, but I think this was the first time an F-35 was shot down, which was an incredible... Yes. Talking about, like, something that is a paper tiger. Yeah,
that's the big deal.
Exactly. Yeah. A development of just a clear example of wasted bloat and inefficiency and for an old school type of war. Yeah, there's talk about
Iran has been invested in projectiles, right? Missiles, rockets, and now drones.
Yeah, and a subject of Vietnam was talking about like smart missiles and how the guided missile systems would be so much smarter in that time, and it wouldn't require as much air warfare to take down a foreign country as it took. And ultimately, in Vietnam, more tonnage was dropped on Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos than was dropped in all of World War II, including the atomic bombs. And so it goes to show, and there was a historian recently who said this, that it is using past as a method of prediction, it is a 100% certainty that Trump will not be able to conquer Iran with air power. It has never happened in post-World War II. 0% of the time have we ever been able, or has anyone ever been able to conquer a society with modern warfare. And even during Vietnam, they were saying, well, we'll be able to do it this time because the missiles are smarter. They're AI driven. They're so much smarter and more intelligent than ever before. And we saw that even the terrible and tragic killing of the school of children in Iran that happened on the same day of the killing of the Ayatollah Khomeini, that Trump and Hegseth, and we're still denying our involvement, but all investigations have pointed to the fact that the United States did do it, and it was its weaponry, which Trump tried to say that Iran has, and they don't actually have.
Right. Well, and the other thing... sorry, finish your thought.
No worries. It's all good. Yeah, you can take over.
I was just thinking about, like, the things about Iran that are so important to understand, too, that make it such an intractable opponent for the U.S. And one of them, as we'll get to, is just morale, but the other is just straight up geography. And I think this is a good way to transition to the next subject, which is...
And the big Achilles heel of our military system. And I think it's important to point out, too, that this is clearly a story of David and Goliath, of Goliath being a powerful empire and overestimating its own abilities and underestimating the abilities of David. And ultimately, it like only takes a small stone to cause a chink in the armor or something like that with a much more powerful empire. And we've learned over and over that you cannot project power across the entire hemisphere of the world, no matter how much technological capability you have. And you cannot cause you cannot create a 1,000-year Reich and succeed.
Yes, right.
It has failed every single time.
1,000-year burger Reich. Yeah.
Yeah. No matter how much technological capability you think you have, you don't have the ability to take over the world. And if you think you do, you're overestimating.
There's two geographic factors that make Iran such an intractable opponent. One is it is mostly a peninsula. I was just looking at it. I think it's like Tehran is at like 1,100 feet or something, like 3,600 feet above sea level. And like overall, Iran is a very high up place. I think a lot of it is a straight up plateau.
And then parts of it are going to be on the beach.
Attack.
Yeah.
Right.
The parts
they're
near
in the coastline still.
The
but
coastline.
The bigger the strait, you said it there, and people are talking about this all the time. The Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz. More like the of Hormuz, am I right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's not the conservative show.
But yeah, no, it's going to be a serious problem for us. The closure.
A serious problem,
and it already is. Gas prices have risen over.
I am trying to make light of a very bad situation. Yeah, that's what I wanted to transition to.
Yeah, we're making
economic collapse.
The price of diesel is above $5, which is definitely going to be reflected in food and has not been reflected yet by giant trucks that haul.
Dude, our giant trucks that we use all the time are not looking like good.
Those trucks that haul the food to your grocery store, though, are going to pass those costs along. And we haven't seen that yet. And it's going to be very sticky. The high costs of gasoline, it's going to take a long time for those prices to go back down.
So much of the political class have invested so much into the Trump project. And I mean, these people just waste money like it's nothing. So who knows how much it'll actually mean to them. But presumably, they're not going to be too happy. I don't know. We'll see. I'm very curious because he's just molesting the money in ways he's never molested it before.
Yeah, he's picking up the bag. Obviously, the economy has been tanking for like 3 consecutive weeks at this point. And it's dipped below the 6. We're now 200 points, I believe, on the S&P below the 6-month average. So we've fallen to lower than where we were in terms of growth 6 months ago. And that's not going to be caught up. It's not possible at this point. Anybody hoping that it will.
See, but the thing you don't understand, it's just a correction. It's just one of those.
Yeah, it's just a small correction. Obviously, the news hasn't reported.
Most of the year has been negative. Okay.
Yeah, most of the year has been negative for the last consecutive 6 months. But it's okay.
All right, and then the previous 3 months too.
Yeah, it's going to trickle down soon.
Soon, for sure. It's coming.
It's coming. Just keep holding. Yeah, it'll be here any second now.
Any minute now, hold on.
As soon as that opening bell rings on Monday morning for the market, I'm sure it's not going to tank. I'm sure the market won't continue to slide, and I'm sure that the news is going to continue not reporting the news, essentially, about what's happening to the markets. Well, because it happens to be a Republican administration, and so it's very important to understand that the liberal media...
They're good at economy.
Yeah, they're good at economy by definition, even when they're f***ing up the bag. And it's better that we just keep quiet.
We're being very dry here, listener.
Yeah,
but I need you to understand, my co-host is pointing out a very interesting phenomenon that he has highlighted to me, and I think very astutely, that the news media, even in their harshest criticism, is relatively tepid at what is a completely implosion disaster, like nuclear just meltdown economically in this country by all of the metrics that they like to point to say that things are good and actually your life is good and you just need to stop complaining. All of those metrics are looking pretty bad. I don't really look at them too much.
Yeah, but you don't want to look at those.
I look at them and I'm like, ugh. It doesn't make me feel
and
good.
The one thing that's for sure is that Jerome Powell is not going to be lowering the interest rates at this point. He chose to hold them steady and the market tanked. Come on, Jerome. He's got a lot of pressure on you, Jerome. There's an investigation right now into your building of a 100-year-old Federal Reserve building. They're going to pinch every penny and make sure that you're not taking anything from outside sources, because obviously if you don't follow what the regime tells you to do in terms of where you set your monetary policy, of course, they actually do care about waste, fraud, and abuse, as they always say, and pay no mind to the fact that Donald Trump has actually pardoned like dozens of fraudsters and is a convicted fraudster himself.
He's Mr. Waste, Fraud, and Abuse. Yeah,
but it's important to catch Somali fraud when you see it. And
oh my God! Like, speaking of waste, fraud, and abuse, and Mr. Waste, Fraud, and Abuse himself, Elon Musk, I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, there's always some new. I check in on the X, the Everything app periodically just to see what kind of weird and evil. It's like the ecosystem of sycophants you can create when you're literally paying people to get on there and post cool things about like how cool your products are and look at what I just AI'd. It's like it is. Like, knowing that there are real human beings that are denigrating themselves like that, and it's like, it's like, I don't believe in slavery, but like, I should be able to make that person work for me for free for like at least a year to help them get. Isn't
that
like
what crypto exists for?
It's for them
to rug pull these people.
What they're doing already is so horrifically denigrating that it's like just doing my chores while I tell you like, no, these people I like you much more than I don't know. I mean, I gotta work out the kinks, but it's so sickening.
As I just mentioned, crypto, I would tell anybody that I really want to fleece like these people that now is the time, because to buy the dip for gold and for crypto, because we're about to reach that final moment that they've been worried about all along of the implosion or the plandemic or whatever the great reset or whatever event that you need to get ahead of and stock up enough of this coin.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that coin is worthless, and you're begging now that you own that coin for the oil that I own and that I got you interested in this stupid venture like gold or Bitcoin. And it turns out, without oil, you're not going to be able to run those servers or ship that gold across continents. So it turns out, the one useful commodity was energy. And it turns out that the market was rigged. You couldn't have known whether or not a green energy source was going to become the new green new scam deal unless you had some kind of insider. Yeah, unless you had insider trading, I guess you wouldn't know whether or not the green new scam was going to be a good investment or a bad one. But it turns out, so those of you who invested in Bitcoin and gold, I'm sorry to say, I shorted you. I have all your money. I invested in oil, and that it turns out that was the good one. When you get to the afterlife, the Christian God is the good one. I put all my eggs in that basket, and I'm sorry to tell you that
on the record.
There's no hope for you if you chose the wrong coin. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm always choosing the wrong coin, but I'm also always buying the dip. So, and that's how we do it on the show. You buy the dip.
Yeah, buy the dip. Now's the time to buy into crypto.
And then sometimes you do the dip, and then they're buying you. And you think about that now for a second. So, the other point I wanted to get to, that sort of just jumping off what you were saying about like whether or not a currency can be undergirded by another type of energy, perhaps, than the petroleum. We're going to talk about one of the oldest. Oh, I didn't finish my thought about Elon Musk though. So his new slogan, because he's doing this whole like chibi bullshit this week. It's extremely annoying. And his new slogan seems to be "Make Life Multiplanetary," which again, if you could do acronyms, it's MLM. So it's like, dude, it's like they're just the most open wastrels, fraudsters, and abusers that you can imagine. And it's just awesome to know that also there are our rulers and our gods, and they are going to take us into space. So I love that for them. But back to the oldest scam in the book that America's been pulling since the post-World War era, since Bitter Lake and old FDR struck the deal. We're talking about the petrodollar, and I want to, just sort of say a sad sayonara to the economic undergirding of my entire adult life. It's not that it's been good for the planet, but I would say, I don't know if you agree with this, my friend, but it feels like the petrodollar is dunzo within the next, who knows, decade or less. Because it's like the Chinese have the technology and zero reason to rebuild the petrodollar infrastructure, because in fact they have every incentive to build around it with other shit. You know what I mean? So It's like, I think that's very likely to happen. They're already very much more invested in green energy than we are as a country.
It was already happening, I think, but this event of the attack on Iran really triggered many events. It just makes it pragmatic. Yeah, it just makes it pragmatic at this point. As many countries have said, they're starting bilateral discussions with Iran, which ultimately means they're just going to listen to both sides. They're going to hear out Iran and they're going to hear out the U.S., and they'll take both into consideration rather than listening to what orders the U.S. tells them. And I think that Carney speech ultimately that he gave recently sums up a lot of the feeling around the world, and that's why it went viral. And many other prime ministers saluted him on that speech and said that it basically reflects the global sentiment. It's what the culture's feeling, essentially, all
Mark
around
Carney.
the world.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
full circle. Look at you. There you go. Do you realize you're quoting Kendrick Lamar?
Of course, yeah.
I love it. Hell yeah, my friend. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So Carney ultimately gave that speech where he talked about the rising role of the middle.
What the culture's feeling.
Yeah, Marx Carney is talking about the middling powers of the world, the ones that don't have nukes right now, and he said they're not really sovereign, and they've been participating. He talked about the idea of like hanging the banner out. It was like a Red Scare analogy, a little bit coded but he was basically saying it takes people participating in a political economic system and being willing to go out and hang the banner every day in order to go along with the system in place. And he said Canada is aware of the contradictions of our world order after World War II and the United States' role as the leader in it. And it has been aware of it for a long time. And he basically said it's time to take down that banner right now and to recognize the role that we have as middle powers, to recognize we no longer have sovereignty, that living under the performance of sovereignty is not actually the same thing as sovereignty.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd also say that great powers can afford for now to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, and the leverage to dictate terms. Middle powers do not. But when we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination.
And so countries all around the world are racing to get nukes. North Korea is signaling that they're scaling up their nukes. France has talked about scaling up their nukes and no longer disclosing the size of their nuclear arsenal. There are several other countries that are doing that. So it's all around the world, an arms race.
I'm just going to give an incomplete list of countries that have nukes right here too. I'm just going to, starting nowhere in particular. Israel, Just gonna,
and Russia and North Korea. And guess which countries haven't been sanctioned by the last 2 years of the Liberation Day sanctions?
I mention that because it's like it has to be like in the discussion of this the like frantic like fucking cannot let Iran ever have a fucking nuclear if they fucking even consider having fucking nukes, those fucking lunatics. Like that's the tenor of the discussion around Iran and having nukes. And it's like at the end of the day, it's like, man, these seem like reasonable people with reasonable plans. I wish they didn't feel like they needed nukes, but their neighbors seem to. So it's like
And last news episode, you were talking about in the last news episode about how there was the idea of Obama sending all this money to Iran. And I had forgotten the reference you were making, but of course, this is a classic trope that Trump has used to set the tone of the last 10 years, just like the pallets
of money.
Yeah, the pallets of money, the open borders, the invasion at the borders. It's all the same sort of thing.
And they talk about this like it's just established fact. And even it's so crazy. It's like they're so powerful with it that it's like even Democrats will come out and be like, it was basically
there really was an invasion
during the it's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What the fuck do you mean? There wasn't like a lot of people. You mean a lot of people tried to immigrate to the U.S. during that time? Like what? Like, do you have to accept the
and the idea that our NATO partners weren't investing enough? That's your failure to understand the global order. And our grade school and our civics classes failure to teach you how the world order actually works, that there actually is a central law system that you can appeal to that upholds the idea of human rights, for example. And the other thing that we were just talking about is, that myth of wheelbarrows full of cash. It's all the same sort of Jacksonian lie. The pallets of cash. I gotta get the fiction correct. It's pallets of cash. Trump would whip me. He would have already gotten rid of me because I can't stay
you said
on
wheelbarrows. Like
I said wheelbarrows. I'd be out like Kristi Noem.
You weren't even getting the shoes.
Yeah, I didn't stand on the line and say the cue that I was given exactly.
Oh my god!
And so ultimately, these pallets of cash myth that he's talking about was the idea that as part of the Obama nuclear deal, the JCPOA or whatever, JCPOA, I can't remember.
Yeah.
As part of that, we were supposed to release sanctioned accounts. As you said earlier, accounts get frozen by criminals who are doing crimes, and the banks can't actually do anything at the time. So they freeze accounts, and that's what happened with these Iranian accounts. They're frozen. So Obama, as part of the nuclear agreement, said, we will release some sanctioned accounts back to you. And that's where the myth of the pallets of cash came from.
So it was their cash already. It was
their own cash given back to them, being released. And of course, Trump for 10 years has been saying it's outrageous that we're giving them wheelbarrows full of cash.
The deal that Obama made, giving them everything, including plane loads of cash. You remember the airplane flew over there? It was a Boeing 757. There was two of them loaded. They took out all the seats. It was loaded with green cash. So much cash that it was in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. They got all the cash from all the banks. They put it, and they flew it to Iran. I never knew a president had that power. I'm going to maybe try it sometime if it's okay. I think I'm going to do it. I'll fly it somewhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. 2 planes loaded from floor to ceiling, big planes, Boeing 757s, taken over there and given cash.
We gave them pallets of cash. The Obamas, they just couldn't stop.
He just can't negotiate, and he's going to start a war with Iran.
our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran. Now, I'm more militant and more militaristic than the president. I believe in strength. But to start a war in order to get elected, and I believe that's going to happen, would be an outrage. This is a great time to negotiate. Unfortunately, we have a president that doesn't know the first thing about negotiation. We have a real problem in the White House. So I believe that he will attack Iran sometime prior to the election because he thinks that's the only way he can get elected. Isn't it pathetic?
Every time the Ayatollah, Ayatollah Khomeini, you don't know the pile of cash?
Yeah, he's a loser. He can't negotiate. He's gonna start a war with Iran, and that's why you have to elect me.
The Ayatollah left a message. He said he wants another pallet of cash. Absolutely. Oh, yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can get a pallet of cash to the Ayatollah. Oh man, you just gotta laugh. I wish Obama was giving your audience more money. I don't think he gave them enough cash.
And of course, Trump now is declaring victory already because this conflict has escalated into a massive quagmire that everybody with any expertise is warning him he needs to find a way to get out. The problem is that this is an escalation trap that he's already gotten himself in, and Iran actually holds all the power.
You're talking Professor Zhang. I love it. You've become a Zhang head. I forgot.
Not really.
Just a little bit.
He's been interesting.
He's smart as hell, dude.
He is a smart guy. There's been some criticisms of him. I think I heard him questioning the Holocaust. Not anybody is perfect. I certainly think the Holocaust is real.
I heard it's described as a wall of a text wall of emojis in which put some good.
Yeah, that one hurt. That one really hurt.
We'll never stop overproducing this broadcast. Never stop, my friend.
Never stop.
Never stop. And I want to talk sovereignty a little bit because you dropped that word in there a little while ago, and I think that's when you were discussing Europe and how you're describing Mark Carney as the Kendrick Lamar of the world stage, which I think there's some room to flesh that to maybe that I don't know if
we can flush out that analogy.
I've been trying to think who would be the Kendrick Lamar of the world stage, and honestly, I think it's hard, it's kind of hard to say. So maybe just Kendrick Lamar, but regardless, Kendrick Lamar for president. Anyway,
of the world.
Sovereignty is a very interesting concept that I feel that once it's one of my political North Stars in a lot of ways. Whenever people are talking about this or that about XYZ country, it's is it the country I live in? Am I going to affect that country? Then I'm questioning the sovereignty of that. You know what I mean? It's that's kind of where I am now. And it's call that nationalist isolationism or whatever it is, but it's more of
it's just treating others as you'd want to be treated. And it's
right. And
recognizing,
that's, I think, an even better way to put it.
Yeah, there's a level of insularity that you should recognize you have by living inside the imperial core, inside the empire.
People lost their shit about that.
Yeah, we're losing our shit about the gas prices, but Americans are not dying in large numbers yet. And I hope that it doesn't come to that. But we are deploying troops. We've lost troops at this point, which is already far too much for this conflict to have escalated. And as I was saying, it's actually, I think it was the New York Times who talked about the escalation trap. And this is a growing problem. And actually, Iran holds all the cards in this escalation trap, because if it escalates to the point of troops on the ground, then they are expecting that we are going to get hit even harder, because at home, domestically, to take any casualties, Americans will start freaking out about it, just as we have done with gas prices. They're playing basically chicken, and the problem with playing chicken with people who have nothing left to lose is that they have nothing left to lose. We've spent decades and decades depriving them of absolutely everything. Right. And Americans are angry at the littlest amount of inconvenience, and not saying that gas prices being now probably for the next 4 or 5 years going to be record high, that's not to belittle that, because that is going to be painful to so many Americans. But the fact of the matter is, you have not been relentlessly bombed and relentlessly had your sovereignty as a nation threatened constantly by the world's largest empire.
And Iran is not isolated in the way that a place like Cuba is. Iran has ways to make sure that they are able to create their own capacity that's forced them to be creative. It's like a fundamental thing in war where it's like, if you have a place that's trying to project power across XYZ distance for XYZ incoherent reasons, versus people whose back is up against the wall, and it's either like your country continues to exist or not. And like, it becomes a very existential and serious question that one side is really invested in, and the other side is just trying to do it with as little loss as possible and not caring about money.
Yeah, and it's the changing asymmetries of warfare and the hubris of the leaders in power and the process that got them into power, that they don't pay any attention or care to those changes that, as we said, your average like World War II military dad has been following by just reading occasional news stories about the Ukraine war and observing to themselves, wow, drones have really changed the nature of war. That did not set in at the MAGA administration, apparently. They have zero understanding of this whatsoever. And even as Zelensky has offered his own counter-drone assistance, which he's probably one of the most experienced, or at least amongst a group of people who are the most experienced at modern warfare. And Donald Trump and their administration has belittled and insulted him and called him P.T. Barnum and things like that in response to him actually offering a cost-effective way to fight drones, such as counter drones, which could cost approximately the same amount. So if a drone costs $20,000, a counter drone costs $20,000. And there you have an effective way that the world's largest empire could start to take down this very effective, decentralized system that Iran has proven. To get back also to tie in the Carney's speech about middling powers, I know it's a lot, but the thesis I think that we're building to is that Iran is proving to the world that middling powers have a lot of power. They have the ability to shut down regional trade in places. They have the ability to bomb neighbors relentlessly, even if they're not nuclear powers. They've been able to shut down the Iron Dome, or effectively, in many ways, to exhaust it. And to start exhausting the world's largest empire.
Well, that's the other thing that happened recently too, is an Iranian drone hit a base that was like far enough away that like you could essentially see them hitting anywhere in Europe if they can hit an American base like that. I can't remember the name of the place, but that happened fairly recently. And they've gotten help also from Russia, because Trump truly hasn't caught on to the fact that he's being played by Putin, even though Putin. Russia is literally formally allied with Iran and China, and they're actually giving passage to Iran and China through the Strait of Hormuz. So their oil is not being disrupted, and it's Europeans and surrounding neighbors in the Middle East that are being disrupted. And basically, Iran is able to selectively apply this pressure of who they're allowing through the Strait of Hormuz, and they're not allowing the U.S. and Israel, and they're punishing regional partners who are crying now for help, and the U.S. has had to take its resources and many of the military bases that we talked about in the last episode, which are part of its imposition of power around the world,
And it's basically revealed by having to take resources from places like South Korea and move them, which is unprecedented, to say, hey, I'm so sorry, but actually I can't protect you with our military bases. I need them now over here because I don't have enough. And it turns out I underestimated Iran. They're way more powerful. I don't have enough missiles, and Trump won't admit that, and his regime won't admit that.
The degree to which everyone within the NATO sphere and who has a military base, their sovereignty is conditional based on their relationship to the U.S. is one of those like massive historical blind spots that Americans are just, as a rule, it's like what makes us the most propagandized people on earth is that particular blind spot that once you fill it in, you really see the kind of bully nature of the United States historically.
Of militarism.
And especially in the post-World War II order.
It's a byproduct of having the world's largest military and having no cap on it. That we get to just keep spending as much as we want on military, and the rest of the world, unlike Trump says it, the rest of the world is not allowed to have militarism while we get to, and that's been a huge part of the problem.
Well, and my headphones are dying here soon, so I want to wrap this up. And my co-host brought in that last major news point that I wanted to highlight very, very adeptly, which is that the U.S. moving those like THAAD interceptor systems out of South Korea and other parts of Asia, it's significant not only because it speaks to the finite resources and limited power projection capabilities of the U.S. empire, but it also speaks to a deprioritization of the Taiwan conflict and a lack of resources to put towards that particular conflict were that to flare up, which I don't think is a strategic decision. I'm sure there's lots of people in the Pentagon and in the blob who are unhappy about that, but sucks to suck.
Releasing the sanctions on Russian oil as they were pretty well exhausted in terms of their means of getting financing for the war on Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine. And they got a sudden influx of money by suddenly having the sanctions lifted, which is a massive win for Putin. And again, Trump thinks he's on the team. Trump is like, cool, will you help us now? And Putin has more and more shown, no, I'm on Iran's team. Quite literally. And then Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, has said, hey, bro, our cause is mutual. I'm here to help you. I don't want to be conquered by Putin. And I can show you what I've learned fighting Putin. And Trump is like, no, you're P.T. Barnum. I don't need you.
And now they pushed, when Zelensky first went in and first met Putin, he said, I want two things. I want Crimea back, and we're going to be a member of NATO. He didn't say it in a very nice way either. He's a great salesman. I call him P.T. Barnum.
Right. Well, I mean, look, he is a little goofy. Let's be real. He's also You're correct.
He's a comedian,
but his experience in drone warfare is you're correct.
Invaluable in this moment. If you actually wanted to win this conflict,
but he's also probably not I don't know. He's probably got more adept people. Regardless, I need to.
It's about the training that Ukraine can provide. But
absolutely. And my headphones are going to die soon. But I wanted to. Round out the discussion a little bit with just one point to say too, that the fires that are happening too with all these oil fields and the trading attacks on oil production facilities. That sucks to be anywhere near. And I'm really sorry for all of the Middle East. That's really miserable. Whoever you are, wherever you live in the Middle East, I'm really sorry that
there's already
happening.
Talks of this being considered crimes against humanity. The idea of releasing chemicals on purpose.
Oh, it's horrific. I've already seen videos of incredible palaces that you see the before and after. It's kind of miserable to think about. But to the Iranian people and to the Islamic Republic of Iran, I personally, as an American, mean you no harm. The great Satan empire that has antagonized you for my entire life, I do apologize as much as I can as an individual. And I have some travel plans coming up where I guess they're going to put ice in the airports now too. So please,
that's going to be
try
great because TSA wasn't bad enough.
Right, I was thinking about that too. It's that's what we needed was more belligerent whose job it is to be a petty tyrant. Not honestly, like the TSA is really not that bad. They haven't given me that much trouble. It's
at
more
this
like
point it's streamlined enough, I suppose.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I do I think it's necessary or effective? No. Do I think the people working it are really that?
They're not bad.
Never encountered. Yeah, I've almost never encountered a TSA agent where I was like, this person sucks. I've never. There's a reason that ICE agents don't fucking wear their logos around and fucking know to hide their job description from people. And I do not look forward to potentially encountering one of those goons in the airport. So yeah, pray for me, folks. By the time y'all hear this, I will probably be in another country in the continent, getting continental with it. So, maybe we'll record a podcast from there, but, peace out to everyone in that time. This may be the last episode of the podcast, like I said, for lots of reasons. Might die. Always can happen. But on that subject too, I wanted to close the podcast with a shout out to the recently deceased Robert Mueller. So yeah. How about that, huh?
Honestly, I was kind of thinking over that.
Guy?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a part of me, I'm of two thoughts, because it's too bad that he didn't actually counter the MAGA regime and do more to stop that. But then another part of me is like, that's a decent guy who I actually don't hold any real grudge against. Like, and it's like after seeing the Trump's reaction to his death, it's like, wow, I just want to be back at a time with normal people who are able to say, like, I don't think that this guy's like the most evil person who ever lived. It just like really highlights our level of detachment when you see the way that Trump reacted. It's similar to the Rob Reiner thing too. There's just like a grotesque level of partisanship behind it that it's like, Robert Mueller was a Republican. Like, you can't treat these guys with like a little bit more respect on the day of their death.
I mean, and like that's I am, fans of the show may know that I was a Russiagate lib early on in all of this, and that pipeline is sort of where I eventually became a bit more left leaning. And Robert Mueller was someone I definitely had a certain amount of psychic investment in at a certain point in my life. I mean, somewhat embarrassed to say, but that's probably why my first gut reaction, especially considering that Trump is, Robert Mueller and Trump outliving Robert Mueller, it just really does prove that like evil is such like, make sure you take your evil every day, folks. Right. Make sure you're taking your evil
it's similar to
clearly it's the only thing.
It's very similar. Also, I'm thinking to Jerome Powell and how Trump is threatening him, and you see Jerome Powell is also a Republican. And it's like when you see the level of detachment from a guy who's doing every possible corruption scandal, like there's just no comparison to any former president. And him complaining about grift of Jerome Powell on a construction project for a Federal Reserve building. It's like,
let Jerome have his fancy building. Come on.
Yeah, it's like let Jerome have his building.
Let him have heated toilet seats. I don't give a fuck.
Heated floor tiles. I don't give a fuck how much he's spending. Honestly. I'm sure it's so much less than whatever the Trump regime is actually up to at this point, and it's not even really.
There's no way.
It's
at least that's being spent.
There's no comparison building, between former Democrats and Republicans and the class of people that were like long-term appointments who served at the behest of both parties. That like typical kind of propagandized idea that we'll get all the time in our upbringing of these are the good people who represent the government. I feel like there is a yearning to get back to that, where it's like you could say like, yeah, just because James Comey was a Democrat or Jerome Powell's a Republican. No, I don't want there to be like some sort of extra legal system to punish them over like a small amount, relatively speaking, of corruption. When now Trump has just blown any type of metric out of the water.
Robert Mueller was also a Vietnam vet, to tie it back to that discussion. Too, funny enough. And who knows what kind of like
I saw that today.
May have gotten
it's
up
like
to
he volunteered.
He
just that
there.
dichotomy of Trump being a six-time draft dodger, six-time bankruptcy.
Hold on. Before you go too lived out on me. contrast, and that is part of why my gut reaction when I first saw this happen, especially like I said, with how much I had invested emotionally in that person,
right,
and how I sort of view all of these things now. My first gut reaction was like, rip bozo, but perhaps that was too cynical. Perhaps that's too Joker-fied.
Well, like once you see that that's Trump's reaction too, it's like, I guess I have to be a better person than that.
Trump was getting up to heinous domestically with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's like, was Robert Mueller getting up to heinous in Vietnam? Probably. Was Donald Trump getting up to heinous with Jeffrey Epstein at that same time? Very likely. So, shades of gray in the ruling class, and rip bozo, but also I wouldn't mind having more bozos like Robert Mueller around, I guess. Or at least, like, I wouldn't mind them being...
That's what I mean.
They were better rulers than these.
Right. It is a liberal, like you said, it's a very liberal sentiment. The idea of like, can't we all just get along? And
we're getting brunched up.
Isn't it possible to live in a society where all the Republicans and Democrats are just nice and they serve at the appointment of other? It's like the fantasy of the team of rivals in Lincoln. There's so many old, long-standing American notions, I guess, that tie to this, and it's like a value that I suppose we have. It's a
liberal country.
Liberal value.
We're a liberal country.
Parties. So we want to be able to get back to that place where it's like, I'm not going to just like immediately say rip bozo because you're a Republican and I hate you.
It's more because
I wish we could get back to a time before
It's more because he's a veteran, but that's because this is a veteran podcast, but it's also like a self-loathing veteran podcast. So we're kind of edgy like that. But I mean, look, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. I want to sign it off here, I think, but it is like I said, we really appreciate anyone listening this far. I also want to shout out my new let's just say one of our hosts may have just had a baby. We'll let you guys guess which one. So let you guys guess. And then I mean, I appreciate everyone who listens, and I appreciate you making it this far. And I mean, thanks to the people of Iran for activating our sleeper cell. We're really excited about what we can do with those new funding streams. We're going to be doing, a lot of new, more sort of holy, like Islamic style content.
Yeah, I really do love their tactic of telling the truth as a form of propaganda. I don't know how to deal with it.
Well, and their aesthetics are sick. I mean, I've been thinking that there is a little bit too much iconism going on in the world. I think that we do a bit too much with the human form at a certain point. The internet just kind of turned me on that. I've kind of but anyway, I mean, I think there's my headphones again saying that they're about to die, but I'm going to sign it off here. Thanks for chatting with me, pal, and I'll talk to you again soon. Y'all have a good one.
Enjoy your trip.
Settle for them greens, yeah, I'm high like the trees. When I send it to my knees, I don't sway with the breeze. They can send me to my knees, yeah.